Been looking forward to this all day. There's so many moving parts in college football. We have a 12-team playoff. Do you coach differently going into a 12-team playoff when you know if you're an Ohio State or a Texas, you may have 4 of your biggest games are at the very end of the season? Texas, Oklahoma move into a different conference. The SEC is a totally different physical reality than the Big 12. Pac-12 moves Midwest. I don't think they're going to cower in fear, but I do think it's different football. And who would know more about a guy that was coach of the year? Urban Meyer was 83-9 in the Big Ten, won natties down in the SEC, and he joins us live, Fox Sports, 17 years, Hall of Fame coach. So this is so exciting to me. I've never been this excited about a college football season in my life. So, you know there's a certain brand, you know it better than anybody. There's Big Ten football. All I hear from Big Ten fans is, oh, those poor West Coast teams. And I'm like, slow down. They're pretty good out West, too. They offer different. So as a Big Ten coach, and now you have Oregon, Washington, SC, what would you be concerned about? How would you look at West Coast teams and say, hey, we may have to alter recruiting a little bit?
You know, my last 2 years, we played USC in the Cotton Bowl, and that way we had opportunity to watch all their film all season long. And then my final season in 2018, we played Washington in the Rose Bowl. And so you got a really good feel, and it's changed a little bit. But the one thing that I'll tell you about the Pac-12, and obviously it's disappeared, and ironically, that was arguably the best, I think was the best conference in college football last year. And now it's gone. But the difference between the Pac-12 and the Big Ten back when I was there and talking to coaches was the line of scrimmage. The Big Ten, certainly the top half of the league, has better offensive defensive linemen than I saw in the Pac-12. And that's as far as skill, quarterback play, skilled athletes on defense. I think, certainly the 4 teams coming in the Big Ten, they have that skill. But the question I have is, will they have the guys up front to compete at the highest level? Because they're going to jump right in and be one of the top half of the Big Ten.
Right.
But those teams at the top of the Big Ten, the offensive and defensive lines are pretty rugged.
So Ohio State's fascinating. I've said they're talented, but I'm not always sure offensively what they are. So they go get Chip Kelly. And it's funny, UCLA, the baby blue uniforms make you think they're finesse. Chip loves to run the ball. Chip would run it 70 times a game if he could. I think he's sort of the missing elixir. I think he's the missing piece for this offense, which in my opinion is prettier than it's ever been, but I'm not sure it's as physical and as tough as urban offenses. Give me your thoughts on what Chip does to Ryan Day's offense.
I'll tell you, Colin, this is something for you to really watch closely. I know we will at Big Noon Kickoff, but Chip Kelly, I've known Chip forever. We're very close. We spent a lot of time together growing in the spread offense, and his philosophy back in the day at Oregon as a head coach and as a coordinator was go as fast as you can. That evolved when he went to the NFL, and it's really evolved when he went to UCLA. He is now the perfect play guy. He's a guy that's going to huddle, take their time, and get the perfect play on. That is drastically different than what he was as a head coach at Oregon. I'm anxious to see it. I've watched some UCLA film. They are very physical. They do believe in running the ball. They believe in getting the quarterback involved. And Will Howard is, I met him when I was in Columbus. What a great looking guy he is. And I understand he's really fast and athletic, and on videotape he looks that way. But this Chip Kelly offense is completely different than the so-called radical offense that he ran when he was the head coach at Oregon. This is completely different. And I do believe it's going to help Ohio State. They got the quarterback, I think, that fits this scheme.
By the way, I think it's remarkable. Big Ten fans may not know this. How many of those UCLA 3-star recruits got drafted? UCLA did a really shockingly good job. USC's recruits got the stars. Chip put more guys in the pros. And so again, it's really, Chip and I have had this conversation. You can't even believe how many Bruins end up in the pros and being high-end players. So I want to go to the 12-team playoff. This is now, Urban, this is like the NFL. It's a semi-NFL structure, and I do wonder if you would get late in the year, you're banged up, you've got injuries, you want to hide some stuff. Would you coach a little differently knowing your toughest 4 games could be your last 4?
I went out to Utah to watch spring practice and speak to the team. I went out to Oregon with Dan Lanning. He's become a good friend and spent time with his team. And then I did the spring game, and obviously I'm close with Ryan Day. And I've talked to a couple guys about, I don't believe anyone's going into that mindset. This is uncharted waters for college football coaches, that a 12-team playoff. You almost sent chills down my spine when you said you coach differently and maybe give away a game. College, you don't do that. College used to be the BCS 2 teams and the playoff 4 teams, and you can't stub your toe. That happened to us a couple of times. We had one loss and we didn't make the playoff. So I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't think anybody can right now until we get a couple of years under our belt in a 12-team playoff.
So Texas has a great roster. The difference from the Big 12 to the SEC is, you can go to Columbia, Missouri, and all of a sudden you got NFL linemen up in your grill. It's a totally different. I saw Georgia go to Missouri like 2 years ago and get pushed all over the field for 3 hours and escape with a win. I don't think Texas and Oklahoma quite understand. I think it's easier for Pac-12 teams to go a little east. I don't think Texas, Oklahoma understand Ole Miss, LSU, Florida, Missouri, even a Kentucky. You tell me, you were in that. It's like there are no days off. Even the bad teams have 88,000 in their stadium.
Yeah, and they're budgeted to win a national championship. I got educated at the SEC in 2005, and when I was at Florida and we played Tennessee in the Swamp, and I looked out there and there's a big men that, once again, a line of skill. Everybody's going to have really good skill. Some teams have elite, but everybody's got good skill. The difference, Colin, is that damn defensive line and linebackers, the way they run in the South and the SEC, and the way they take their football. So I count 8. Now you add Texas and Oklahoma. I count 10 teams that really, they're alumni, they're budgeted, and their fans expect them to compete for a national title. In the Big Ten, you got Ohio State and the Wolverines, you got Penn State, and now I put USC in that category. Oregon is getting close. They played in a couple national championship games, so they're very, very close. Washington played in a championship game. They're very close. But until you win that darn thing, I don't know if we can put them up there. So I think the SEC is a whole different level as far as top to bottom. Now, the top teams in the Big Ten, good as anybody. That proved it last year. The Wolverine team was one of the best teams in the last 10 years. Ohio State has arguably the best roster in college football. However, week in, week out, Texas and Oklahoma. Now, I got respect for those programs and those coaches, but it's going to be something they've not experienced.
So I said this about Lincoln Riley. I said, go look at Jim Harbaugh and Brian Kelly. And Lincoln Riley. Lincoln Riley was a play from 12 wins his first year. They took over a 4-8 program with about 28 guys that could play, and they were a play from 12. But if you watched them, they didn't look like a 12-win team. No. Harbaugh took a team from Brady Hoke first year, they won 10. And they had a nice tight end, and they had a couple, but it was a lot of ham and egg. It was like, they don't look like Ohio State. I don't care what their win. They don't look like Alabama. Brian Kelly got to a natty with Manti Te'o, and I'm like, I watched the games. I'm like, that's not an SEC. It's scheduling and winning close games. And I said this with Lincoln Riley. They don't look like a national championship team. That it's so hard to get 2 deeps where the backups are just NFLers. They're just not they're 2 years away. I think USC is going to go in and win about 7-8 games. I don't think they'll beat Penn State. I don't think they'll beat Notre Dame. I don't think they'll beat LSU. I think they can win 8. But even with the transfer portal, which everybody thinks that's magic, it solves everything, Brian Kelly found out you can't build a culture around a portal overnight. What is reasonable, even for a big brand, to be able to go into a program and have, not win 10 games, a natty roster that can go toe-to-toe with Georgia?
I go back to when I walk on a practice field, and I used to do this when I was a head coach, and I'd walk in pregame, and I was so mesmerized by, because I was an offensive coach, I would stare at that defensive line. And at the end of the day, if you do not have that, it's not going to happen. As a matter of fact, I think if you get exposed in a really good conference without a defensive front, that's going to be a really bad year for you. And the way I was raised in this great game, and I do it now whenever I go to games and I'm getting ready for Fox, broadcast a game, the first thing I do is I flip on that film and I stare at that defensive line. And if you got the Chase Young, Nick Bosa, Joe Bosa's, et cetera, those kind of guys, that's like things are going to look really good for you. You look at Georgia over the years; they've had really good quarterbacks. That's Stetson Bennett. My goodness, won a national championship, that's not what won a national. He's a great player, and he's surrounded by great players. But at the end of the day, you have to have those guys on the defensive line. And I've coached against USC. I was on the sideline when they played Utah for the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah.
And they did not look. I agree with you. They did not look like it. They looked like it as quarterback and skill. But we all know what happens when it gets to November. Quarterbacks and skill. That's not what wins it for you.
All right. So give me a surprise team in the new Big Ten. I know I've got one. Give me a surprise team that you've either been to practice, the coach. I think Nebraska could be very interesting. Nebraska's interesting to me. What do you think?
Yeah, you stole my thunder. I got a lot of respect. People know this. I'm a Nebraska fan. If I was a player, I'd love to go to Nebraska instead. History of the stadium, the fans are incredible. We coached out there, and they've been really down for several years. And I was shocked when on the sideline a couple of times we played against them. And, you talk about a team that didn't look like Nebraska of old. I just think he's recruited well. They got the transfer quarterback that Dylan that is a really good player.
Yeah.
And I like their coach. Their coach knows how to win. He's won at every level. There's a difference between winning and then winning at every level. And that's why I got a lot of respect for Matt Rule. So Nebraska would be my team. They're not good enough, Colin, to win it, but they're good enough to make some noise.
All right. By the way, the summer's almost over. You're going to have to put the golf clubs away a little bit. None of this cushy lifestyle nonsense. Are you ready to put the time in now, Coach?
I'll tell you, it's been cushy, man. I've been fly fishing on Montana. I've been member guest in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. So I'm back in the heat of Florida. I'm down in my office here and I'm starting to watch film, but I'm ready to go.
Great seeing you. So much fun for me. Thanks, Coach.
So good to see you.
So Urban
Thanks.
Meyer. Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.